Joining me now in the studio is the Acting Education Minister, also Employment Minister Stuart Robert. Thanks for your time. It hasn't been a pretty week for the government, you must concede. 5 of your colleagues crossing the floor this morning, and the religious discrimination bill essentially stalled until beyond the election now.
Politics is always challenging, and Kieran, it's always what you can get from a parliament going forward. In our parliament, of course, our party, you can cross the floor. That's accepted. The Labor Party, of course, you'll be expelled, but I'm less concerned about the 5 crossing the floor as I am with the amendments that have just been passed. I've just come from a meeting with the Attorney-General. There are substantial legal concerns that the amendments passed under Section 37, which is about religious bodies, as opposed to Section 38 or Section 21 that deal with education, will actually have an unintended consequence now of allowing schools to discriminate against gay kids.
But they haven't gone through the Senate, so it's a moot point.
Well, the point is a bill has passed the House with unintended consequences that may well allow discrimination against kids. So clearly this needs to be reviewed rapidly before it goes to the Senate so we can understand and ostensibly address this.
Sure, but in terms of where this is at, the religious discrimination bill has stalled. It was an election promise. It's not going to be delivered.
Well, the religious discrimination bill passed in its entirety by the government.
Why not put it to the Senate?
The changes to the Sex Discrimination Act, they are the issues that the amendments last night potentially have stuffed up.
Separate legislation. Why not put the religious discrimination bill to the Senate? Well, you didn't have the numbers, is that right?
The options to be considered at a later date. Right now, the biggest concern I've got is the changes to the Sexual Discrimination Act, whereby the unintended consequence, relying on a general provision under Section 37, is that schools may now be able to discriminate. And schools don't. Schools are great. They've not been discriminating. None of this has been happening. Schools, in my experience, have just been excellent. But we have a problem now, and this is the issue with unintended consequences of rushed amendments. And this is why we wanted these amendments to go to the Law Reform Council for proper review.
But doesn't it also show the problem of leaving this to the 11th hour before the election?
Well, we've been negotiating, ensuring people are informed, taking counsel, input from various schools and organisations.
But obviously, if you lose 5 of your own side, it hasn't been done well enough. You'd concede that.
The Liberal Party allows members to exercise a conscience where they feel a need to. And that's what you saw last night. Labor, of course, you'd be expelled from the party. There's no democracy there at all.
Sure, I get all that, but when it's the Prime Minister wanting to push and establish his own agenda and own legislation, and he can't do it.
Well, let me correct you.
That's a pretty messy scenario.
We took this to the election. The Religious Discrimination Act...
Totally, I understand that, but
which means
he's trying to legislate that, he can't do it.
Every single member of parliament that was elected agreed with the platform. They all did. And we're fulfilling our election commitments as you'd expect a responsible government
Well, not really.
No, absolutely.
Fulfilling it.
Absolutely we are.
Where is it in the Senate?
We've put it through the House. The problem is at the same time, these amendments to the Sexual Discrimination Act have now created quite a problem for schools.
Yeah, but it's the separate bill. You can put the religious discrimination bill to the upper house. You're not doing that. You're not fulfilling your election commitment. That's the reality.
No, our intent is to continue to fulfil our commitments, but we've got to address this substantial problem that rushed amendments may well have put in place.
Yeah, but getting to that point of, you said it was an election commitment, that's correct. You're not putting it through the parliament. It's a broken promise.
Not at all. The religious discrimination bill...
So you haven't given up?
...has passed the House.
You're going to bring it back in the budget week?
I'll let others speak to that in terms of the leadership. But the problem I've got now, and the Attorney-General's got now, and as the Education Minister I've got, rushed amendments that may well head to the Senate will now have potentially a deleterious effect on what happens to gay kids. Now, that's clearly unacceptable because we've made the point no child should ever be excluded from a school because of their sexual orientation, and rushed amendments have now made this difficult.
Amendments voted in support of by 5 of your fellow Liberals.
As I said, the Liberal Party doesn't throw you out of the party for seeking to cross the floor on something you believe in. The problem is that the particular amendments may well be severely errant.
But should the government have done its due diligence in terms of thinking about what your own side believes before you put this to a vote?
Well, the government does.
Because the week has ended up being a massive own goal for the Prime Minister.
The government does. The government always looks to put forward an agenda, explains it to members, it passed the party room. All of that was done. Now, Liberal Party members have exercised another choice.
Well, you didn't expect 5 to vote against? Did that take you by surprise?
I'm not the Leader of the House. It's a question for Minister Dutton. They've exercised a conscience, which the Liberal Party allows and Labor doesn't. The problem we've got now is unintended consequences in those amendments, and that is a serious problem.